Hi, I'm Caleb with Allied Siding and Roofing. We're going to do a tutorial today on how to bend some different kinds of aluminum for different scenarios you're going to run into with siding or say vinyl or roofing. I usually just use a sharp blade and I cut a straight edge. Some guys will get their snips, but when you cut with snips it creates a lot of jagged edges on your edge, and so then you have to clean that off all the time. With a knife and a skilled hand you can usually get one really good cut. It's got to be a sharp blade obviously, and then you can bend the aluminum and snap it. I'm going to lock the brake down, that snaps it into place, and I'm going to cut it. So usually I cut a couple times each direction with a sharp blade, of course. The duller it gets, the more times you need to stroke across there to get your cut. So I just simply pull my tape and mark my points. So 8 inches on both ends. Slide that into place. Lock that in. Here we go. And one thing that a lot of guys do is they'll run their blade across and they'll run it into these teeth. You don't want to do that because that's going to damage them or nick them. So that's why I usually start at the edge, coming in towards the middle, because I don't want my blade to destroy my edges of the brake. The brake is much more expensive than a new blade. So I'm going to do, just to show you, I'm going to get a 3/8 bend at first. So 3/8 to 1/4 inch is about the minimum you can get before it will slide out of your brake. And I'll show you what I mean in a second. So I marked 3/8 on both sides of my aluminum. I'll lock that in. Okay. So a lot of times when you bend, if the bend is too small that's inside the brake, it will actually pop out and then you won't get your bend. It'll just warp your aluminum. So 3/8 is about as small as I usually go, but in a rare scenario I'll use a 1/4 inch, and you have to sort of work it a little bit with that. So there's my 3/8 bend. This is obviously, that's that profile taping out towards the fascia or the soffit. And then depending on how deep you want to go, you can make the next bend any size really you want. Usually I'm going to do about 1 inch to 1 1/4 inches. So by the time from here to this edge where it comes up, it's going to be about 1.5 inches. And that will cover your old fascia and it will run and cover your new soffit. So right here I'm going to go I'll go 1.25 inches on both ends. Bend that to about a 90 degree, maybe slightly more. Once again, it's good to put some pressure on the aluminum when you set it into place. So now I have my profile. If I'm covering a 1x6 fascia, the 1x6 fascia is going to be 5.5. So from the bottom of my fascia to the top of my fascia on my aluminum bend, I need about 5.5, maybe a little bit more depending on how far this bend is. So 5 3/4. So to get the hem, I'm going to bend it all the way down to where the brake stops. So once again, all the way where the brake stops. Pop it out. And I'm going to turn it around to where that bend is facing me. The brake is locked in, and then this rubber flange is going to push it all the way tight again. Tight to the blade. And that's going to lock that in. That's going to give you your hem. One thing that is also important on the hem side of things is I usually like to hem my aluminum when I'm in areas where there's a lot of foot traffic or maybe young kids. I don't want, aluminum is incredibly sharp, so if you hit it, it's gonna cut you right up. So this is something I do when I'm in areas that are low or I'm in a lot of foot traffic areas, because if somebody were to run across this, it's not pretty. So you can see I hem that. That creates a rounded edge so that the sharp aluminum can't cut you. So lock that in all the way down. Pull that out. do this every day, so I don't have to think about it too much, but if you're not doing this all the time or you're newer to it, you're going to have to think about your orientation, which way you want the color of aluminum, which way you want it to face. That's all very important, and you can go through a lot of aluminum if you're not taking your time and doing it right. So definitely want to make sure you're going the right direction. So I'm going to do about an inch profile in the face. You can grow or shrink that. Usually, I mean, the smaller the profile, the better, but you don't want to go too small, you don't want to go too big, so 3/4 to an inch is usually a really nice looking profile. So, and if you notice, sometimes I run my hand along it because usually the center of the brake, and this could also be due to the fact that I haven't adjusted the tightness in this in a few minutes, but the center will bend the least and the outsides will actually overbend, so sometimes I run my hand along it to get an even bend, and that's one of the reasons I like to wear gloves as well. And then this is a scenario, you know, when you're running into your brick, you have to determine how far in or out you're going to go. Really, if you're doing a retrofit house, the old trim or the old caulk line is usually what I'll try and cover just a little bit. And so, you know, you can measure off the wall to determine how far off the wall you want to come till your edge covers over that. We'll go about 1.5 inches to my edge there. So I want my angle to be a little bit more than 90 degrees, and then you come down on that taper. So last but not least, I'm going to do your L bend, and I'll show you what that's going to look like. Right here, the L bend, I want a little bit more than 90 degrees. You don't want it to be too shallow because then you can't really put pressure on it, but you don't want it too open because when you push on it, it's going to create bubbles or wrinkles in your aluminum. So, in this case, I'm going to do a 3/4 inch bend and I'm going to hem it, but you could really do anything. You know, you don't have to go through doors. You can grow it or shrink it depending on the size of the bend. So there's that. Lock it in place. Set it up against that little flange there. That's the brake arm. Close it. And then of course, I determine what size I'm going to go. Usually I go about 1.5 inches. 1.5 is pretty good. It's sturdy, but it also gives you enough profile off the wall to where it's going to cover all your side, and your side is not going to run past it, and it's going to be a nice, clean look. So there's that. And once again, you have to run your hand sometimes to get a nice, more even bend, but there's the bend I'm looking for, a little more than 90 degrees. Gives you a great seal, great look, all that. So. Anyways, I hope you enjoy. I hope this content is helpful. If it is, please subscribe in the button below.